My name is Ava Miller. I am 27 years old, and I live in San Francisco. I was holding the bowl of mashed potatoes when my life fell apart. It was supposed to be a quiet family dinner in Franklin. The kind of dinner I had paid for 1,000 times before. But this time, the air felt heavy. It was too quiet. My father put down his fork. He looked me dead in the eye. There was no love in his face anymore. Just cold, hard distance. He said, "Nobody needs your money, Ava, and nobody needs you." I felt like I had been punched in the chest. I turned to my mother, but she looked away. I turned to my sister, Madison. I waited for her to jump in. I waited for her to say, "That's not true." After everything I had done for her, the loans, the car, the support, surely she would defend me. But she didn't. Madison just looked at me and nodded. She agreed without hesitation. The entire table went silent. It felt like they had rehearsed this moment. They wanted to cut me out. They expected me to cry. They expected me to beg them to love me. But I didn't shed a single tear. I didn't scream. I just went very, very quiet. They thought they had broken me. They didn't realize that my silence wasn't surrender. It was a warning, and they were about to lose everything. But before I tell you how everything flipped, like and subscribe, drop a comment. Where are you watching from? To understand why the silence at that dinner table shattered me, you have to understand the noise I grew up with. You have to understand the house in Franklin. It wasn't a noise you could record on a phone. It was a feeling. It was the hum of anxiety that vibrated in the walls. I didn't grow up with money. I grew up with the fear of not having it. Our house was small. It had gray siding that was starting to peel, revealing the damp wood underneath. The front porch steps were loose. If you stepped on the third one, it made a loud crack sound, like a bone breaking. My father always said he would fix it. He never did. He was too tired. My father worked at the local assembly plant. It was hard work. He came home with grease under his fingernails and a gray look on his face. My mother worked part-time at a diner, but her shifts were irregular. We never knew if we would have a good month or a bad month. Usually, it was a bad month. I was the oldest. Being the oldest in a struggling family is a job. You aren't just a child, you are a witness. I remember the evenings vividly. The television would be on, playing some loud game show, but nobody was watching it. My parents would be in the kitchen. They thought they were whispering, but the house was thin. I could hear everything. "The electric bill is pink again, Jerry," my mother would say. Her voice wasn't angry, it was scared. A high, tight sound. "I know, Linda, I know," my father would reply. "I'm picking up overtime next week. Just hide it in the drawer for now." The drawer. That kitchen drawer was the scariest place in the world to me. It was where the red and pink notices went to die. It was where the warnings lived. I was 10 years old when I started checking the mail before my parents got home. I would sort through the envelopes. I learned the logos of the collection agencies. I learned that final notice meant the lights might go out. I would put the bad mail on the bottom of the stack, trying to protect my parents, trying to delay the argument that I knew was coming. Then there was the cold. Franklin gets freezing in the winter. The wind cuts right through you. Our furnace was old. It was a rusted metal beast in the basement that rattled and coughed. It struggled to keep the house above 60 degrees. To save money, my mother invented the layer game. "Okay, girls," she would say, clapping her hands like it was a party. "Who can wear the most sweaters today?" My little sister, Madison, loved it. She was 4 years younger than me. She would put on 3 shirts and a puffy vest and waddle around the living room laughing. She didn't know we were poor. She just thought we were playing dress-up. But I knew. I sat on the couch with 2 hoodies on, watching my breath fog up in the living room air. I knew that the thermostat was set to 55 because every degree cost money we didn't have. I looked at Madison, spinning in circles, happy and oblivious, and I felt a fierce, burning need to protect her. I didn't want her to ever know what the red envelopes meant. I didn't want her to know why Dad sat in the dark sometimes, staring at the wall. The turning point happened when I was 12 and Madison was 8. It was September. Back-to-school season. Madison came home from school one day with her face streaked with tears. She slammed the front door and ran straight to our room. We shared a bedroom. It was small, with bunk beds. I had the top, she had the bottom. I found her face down on her pillow, sobbing. Her little shoulders were shaking. "Maddie," I asked. I sat on the edge of her bed. "What happened?" She sat up. Her face was red and blotchy. "I hate school," she said. "I hate everyone." "Why?" I brushed the hair out of her face. "It's gym class," she cried. "Everyone has the silver star sneakers. All the girls, even Sarah and her dad doesn't even work. I'm the only one with the generic ones from the discount bin. They laughed at me, Ava. They called me Bargain Bin Maddie. My heart broke. I knew those shoes. They were $60. To us, $60 was a week of groceries. It was half the electric bill. I asked Mom for them, Madison sobbed. She yelled at me. She said I was selfish. She said I should be grateful I have feet. I looked at my little sister. She wasn't selfish. She just wanted to fit in. She wanted to be like everyone else. I hugged her tight. She smelled like strawberry shampoo and tears. Listen to me, I whispered into her ear. Don't cry. It's not fair, she whimpered. I know it's not fair, I said. But I'm going to fix it. She pulled back and looked at me. How, you're a kid too. I looked her in the eyes. I felt older than 12. I felt ancient. I'm going to study, I told her. I'm going to be the smartest person in this town. And then I'm going to get a big job. A job that pays real money, not like Dad's job. Madison sniffled. You are? Yes, I promised. And when I do, I will buy you whatever you want. You want Silver Star sneakers. I'll buy you 10 pairs. You want a car? I'll buy you a car. I promise, Maddie, I will take care of us. That promise became my religion. From that day on, I changed. I stopped being a child. I became a machine. While other teenagers in high school were going to football games or hanging out at the mall, I was at the kitchen table. I had my books spread out. I learned to tune out the sound of my parents arguing about money in the next room. I took every advanced class. Calculus, physics, computer science. I discovered I was good at coding. It made sense to me. Code was logical. If you had a problem, you wrote a line of code to fix it. It wasn't like my life, where problems just hung in the air with no solution. I worked part-time at the grocery store on weekends. I didn't keep a cent of my paycheck. I gave half to my mom for groceries, and I saved the other half for college applications. My parents didn't really understand what I was doing. Why do you study so much? My dad would ask, watching TV. You're gonna burn out, just get a job at the bank or something. I'm going to get a scholarship, Dad, I would say without looking up. Dream on, he'd mutter. People like us don't get scholarships. But I did. The letter came in the spring of my senior year. It was a thick envelope. I opened it on the porch, standing on the step that didn't squeak. Full tuition. University of California, engineering program. I felt like I was going to float away. I had done it. I had found the escape hatch. I ran inside to tell them. Mom, Dad, I shouted. I got in. I got a full ride to California. My mother was wiping the counter. She stopped. She took the letter from my hand. She read it. I waited for her to hug me. I waited for her to cry tears of joy. I waited for her to say, I'm so proud of you, Ava. She put the letter down. She looked tired. California, she said. That's far away, Ava. Who's going to help me with the budget if you're in California? My heart sank. Mom, it's free college, I said. It's my future. I know, she sighed. It's just. We rely on you. I'll still help, I said quickly. The guilt was already clawing at my throat. I'll get a job there. I'll send money home, I promise. That was the condition of my freedom. I could leave, but I had to pay for the privilege. So I packed my bags. I hugged Madison goodbye. She was 16 now, and she was beautiful. She didn't have to worry about grades because I had helped her with her homework for years. Don't forget your promise, she joked as I loaded the car. I won't, I said seriously. I'm going to make us rich. I drove away from the peeling gray house. I drove away from the broken porch step. I thought I was driving toward a new life. I didn't realize that I was just extending the tether. I wasn't escaping. I was just going to a place where I could earn enough to carry them all on my back. San Francisco was a different planet. The buildings were glass and steel. The air smelled like the ocean and expensive coffee. People walked fast and talked about startups and equity. I felt small. I felt like the girl from Franklin with the cheap shoes. But I worked harder than anyone else. I landed a job as a junior software engineer at a big tech firm right out of college. The starting salary was more money than my father made in 5 years. When I saw my first paycheck, I almost cried. I sat in my tiny, overpriced studio apartment and stared at the number on the screen. I didn't buy champagne. I didn't go out to a fancy dinner. I opened my banking app and set up a transfer to Linda and Jerry Miller. Amount $1,000, I called them. Did you get it? I asked. Get what? My dad asked. Check your account, I said. A pause, then, oh yeah, we got it. Thanks, Ava, the truck needed new tires anyway. That was it. No, wow, no, you're amazing. just a confirmation that the transaction was successful, but I kept doing it. Every month. It started with $1,000. Then, as I got promoted, it became $1,500. Then $2,000. I became the invisible pillar of the family. If the roof leaked in Franklin, they didn't call a roofer. They called me. If the dog got sick, they called me. If the taxes went up, they called me. Ava, it's Mom. Listen, we got a letter from the county. We're a little short this month. How much, Mom? I would ask, typing on my keyboard at work, exhausted from a 10-hour coding session. 600. Okay, sent. I lived like a monk in San Francisco so they could live comfortably in Franklin. My coworkers drove Teslas and went on ski trips to Tahoe. I drove a 10-year-old sedan and spent my weekends sleeping because I was working freelance gigs on the side to make extra cash. I told myself it was worth it. I was keeping my promise. Then came the era of Madison. Madison didn't go to college. She said she wasn't academic. She liked fashion. She liked style. She was the popular girl in town, the one everyone watched. She called me when I was 25. Ava, she squealed. I have the best idea. You know that empty storefront on Main Street, next to the bakery? Yeah, I said, cradling the phone while I cooked instant noodles. I want to open a boutique, she said. There's nowhere to buy cute clothes in Franklin. Everyone has to drive an hour to the mall. I could sell trendy stuff right here. I have the eye for it, Ava. I know I do. I listened to her excitement. I heard the hope in her voice. It reminded me of the little girl who wanted the sneakers. That sounds like a great idea, Maddie, I said. There's just one thing, she said, her voice dropping. Banks won't give me a loan. I don't have any credit history. And Mom and Dad, well, you know, I knew. Mom and Dad had bad credit and no savings. How much do you need? I asked. I knew where this was going. To secure the lease, buy the racks, the inventory, the signage. About $30,000, she said. I choked on my water. 30,000? Please, Ava, she begged. I'll pay you back, I swear. It's an investment. Once the shop takes off, I'll be making so much money. I won't need your help anymore. I'll be independent. That word got me. Independent. If Madison could build a business, maybe she could support herself. Maybe she could even help Mom and Dad. Maybe eventually I could stop sending checks every month. Maybe I could finally start my own life. Okay, I said, I'll do it. I drained my savings account. Years of bonuses, years of overtime, gone in one wire transfer. Madison opened Madison style. I flew home for the grand opening. I stood in the corner watching her cut the ribbon. She looked radiant. She was wearing a dress I had paid for, standing in a shop I had paid for. My parents were beaming. They went around telling everyone, "This is our daughter's shop, isn't she talented?" Nobody mentioned me. I was standing right there, holding a glass of cheap punch, and nobody said, "And this is Ava, the one who made it possible." I swallowed the hurt. It's fine, I told myself. It's her day. Let her shine, but the requests didn't stop. They got bigger. 6 months later, Madison called. "The shop is doing okay," she said, "but I need a car. I can't keep borrowing Mom's rusted van to pick up inventory from the city. I need something reliable. And it needs to look good. Image is everything in this business." "Maddie, I just gave you 30 grand, I said. "I know. And I'm working so hard. But without a car, the business will fail. Do you want the business to fail, Ava? Do you want me to lose everything?" She knew exactly which buttons to push. She used my fear of failure against me. "Fine," I said, "find a car." She found a white SUV, brand new, leather seats, sunroof. It cost $45,000. I flew home to sign the papers because her credit score was still too low. I sat in the dealership office. The salesman, a slick guy named Rick, looked at me. "You're a nice sister," he said, "putting this all in your name." "She needs it for business," I said stiffly. I signed the papers. Primary borrower, Ava Miller. I handed the keys to Madison. She shrieked and hugged me. "Thank you, thank you, thank you, you're the best." For a moment, it felt good. I felt like the hero. But that feeling didn't last. Over the next 2 years, a subtle shift happened. A slow, poisonous change in the dynamic. They stopped asking. They started expecting. It wasn't, "Ava, can you help us?" It was, "Ava, the mortgage is due on Tuesday. Don't be late." It wasn't, "Thank you for the car." It was, "Ava, the SUV needs new brakes. Transfer the money to the mechanic." And Madison, she changed the most. She started to believe her own hype. She became a local celebrity in Franklin, the young entrepreneur. She posted constantly on social media, photos of her in the boutique, photos of her leaning against the white SUV. Captions like, "Number boss babe, number self-made, number hustle hard." I would comment sometimes. "Looks great, Maddie." She wouldn't reply, or she would just like the comment. But if a customer commented, she would write a paragraph back. I started to feel like a dirty secret. Like they were ashamed that they needed me. To acknowledge me was to admit that they weren't successful on their own, so they hid me. They took my money, but they hid me. I remember one Christmas, I bought my mother a beautiful necklace. It was expensive. She opened it and smiled. "Oh, nice," she said. She put it aside. 5 minutes later, Madison gave her a scarf from the boutique. A scarf that I had paid for when I bought the inventory. "Oh, Maddie," Mom cried, tearing up. "It's beautiful, you have such good taste, you work so hard." I sat there, stunned. I had paid for both gifts, but only one mattered. The distance became emotional. I stopped calling as much. They didn't notice. As long as the auto-pay notifications came through, they didn't care if I was happy, sad, or lonely. I was just a resource. I was a well they could draw water from. And they didn't realize that the well was starting to run dry. Not of money, I had plenty of money, but of patience, of love. I was getting tired. Deep in my bones, I was exhausted. And then came Thanksgiving. The dinner that would change everything. I flew home with a heavy heart. I didn't know why I was going. Habit, I guess. Or maybe I was still that 12-year-old girl hoping that if I just did enough, if I just gave enough, they would finally look at me and say, "We love you." I was wrong. They didn't want to love me. They wanted to use me. And they were about to tell me that to my face. I pulled my rental car into the driveway of my childhood home on a Wednesday afternoon. The sky was gray, threatening snow, which felt fitting. I looked at the house. It looked better than it used to. The peeling paint was gone, replaced by fresh siding I had paid for 3 years ago. The roof was new. I had written a check for that too. And there, in the prime spot of the driveway, was the white SUV. Madison's car. It was parked crookedly, taking up 2 spaces. It was covered in a thin layer of road dust, but the chrome rims still shined. I sat in my car for a moment. My hands were gripping the steering wheel. My knuckles were white. I took a deep breath. "It's just Thanksgiving," I told myself. "Just get through dinner, smile, be the good daughter." I grabbed my suitcase and walked up the steps. I stepped on the third one, the one that used to crack. It was silent now. My money had fixed the silence too. I opened the front door. "Hello," I called out. The house was warm. The heat was cranking. I remembered the days of the layer game, shivering in sweaters. Now the thermostat was set to 72 degrees. My mother poked her head out of the kitchen. She was wearing an apron I didn't recognize. "Oh," she said. "You're here." She didn't wipe her hands. She didn't come over to hug me. She just looked at my suitcase like it was an obstacle she would have to step around. "Hi, Mom," I said. I tried to keep my voice bright. "It's good to see you." "You're early," she said, turning back to the stove. "I'm not done with the pies. Don't come in here and crowd me." "Okay," I said. "Where's Dad?" "Living room," she called out over the sound of a mixer. I walked into the living room. My father was in his recliner, a new leather one I had bought him for his birthday last year. He was watching football. The volume was loud. "Hey, Dad," I said. He didn't turn his head. He kept his eyes on the screen. "Move out of the way, Ava. You're blocking the score." I stepped to the side. "Happy Thanksgiving, Dad." Yeah, he grunted. "Did you bring that scotch I asked for?" "I did," I said. "It's in my bag." "Good, put it on the counter." That was my welcome. No hugs, no questions about my life. Just a demand for alcohol and a complaint that I was blocking the TV. I went upstairs to the guest room. I unpacked my clothes slowly. I sat on the bed and looked at the wall. I felt a familiar heaviness settling in my chest. It was the feeling of being invisible. Madison arrived an hour later. She didn't knock, she just burst through the door. "Mom, Dad," she shouted. "I'm home." I heard my parents scramble. I heard the recliner snap shut. I heard my mother running from the kitchen. "Maddie, oh look at you," my mother cried. "You look beautiful, is that a new coat? Do you like it?" Madison's voice drifted up the stairs. "It's vintage. I got it from a dealer in the city." "Gorgeous," my dad said. His voice was full of warmth, a warmth I hadn't heard in years. "My little businesswoman." I stood at the top of the stairs, watching them. They were a tight circle of 3. They were hugging, they were laughing. I walked down the stairs. "Hi, Maddie," I said. The circle broke. They looked up at me. The smiles faded just a fraction. "Oh, hey, Ava," Madison said. She didn't move to hug me. She just waved a hand, her fingers adorned with rings. "I didn't know you were here already." "I got in a while ago," I said. Cool, she said. She turned back to Mom. Mom, I am starving. Is the turkey ready? The next 24 hours were a lesson in endurance. I tried to be helpful. I peeled 5 pounds of potatoes. I chopped the celery for the stuffing. I set the table with the good china. Nobody said thank you. They just worked around me, talking to each other about people I didn't know and gossip I didn't care about. Finally, it was time for dinner. We sat down. My father sat at the head of the table. My mother sat to his right. Madison sat to his left. I sat across from Madison next to the empty chair. The food looked good. The turkey was golden. The mashed potatoes were fluffy. Let's eat, my dad said. He didn't suggest saying grace. He just picked up the carving knife. We passed the bowls around. For the first few minutes, the only sound was the clinking of silverware on plates. Then my father cleared his throat. It was a loud, deliberate sound. He looked at me. He didn't smile. So Ava, he said, Madison was telling us about her new marketing campaign for the holidays. I looked up, surprised he was initiating conversation. Oh, that's great. It would be great, he said, his voice sharpening, if she could afford to run it. I froze. I knew this tone. It was the money tone. I told her to scale it back, I said, keeping my voice calm. She wanted to spend $5,000 on Facebook ads in 1 week. I told her that wasn't in the budget this month. My mother slammed her fork down. Budget, you always talk about budgets. It's a business, Mom, I explained. You have to have a budget. She needs those ads to get customers, my mother argued. How is she supposed to grow if you stifle her? I'm not stifling her, I said. I looked at Madison. She was staring at her plate, looking like a victim. Maddie, tell them, I told you we could do it next month. Madison looked up. Her eyes were cold. Next month is too late, Ava. It's the holiday season. If I miss this window, I miss the revenue. You don't understand business. I almost laughed. I don't understand business. I'm the one balancing your books every weekend, Madison. I'm the one covering your losses. You hold that over my head constantly, Madison snapped. Money, 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 that's all you care about. I care about keeping you afloat, I said, my voice rising. I pay the rent. I pay for the car sitting in the driveway. I pay for the roof over our heads right now. The room went silent. I shouldn't have said it. I knew the rule. The rule was, Ava pays, but Ava never mentions it. I had broken the rule. My father's face turned a deep, angry red. He hated being reminded that his daughter was the provider. He hated knowing that he was living on my charity. He put down his fork. He wiped his mouth with a napkin slowly. You think you're special, don't you? He said quietly. No, Dad, I said. I just want some respect. Respect, he scoffed. You think because you went off to California and got a fancy job, you can come back here and lord it over us. You think you can control us. I'm helping you, I pleaded. It doesn't feel like help, my mother spat. It feels like control. You treat us like children. You treat Madison like she's incompetent. She asks for the money, I said, gesturing to my sister. Madison looked at me with a sneer. I ask because you offer. You like it, Ava. You like making us feel small. You like being the savior. I felt tears pricking my eyes. That is not true. I work myself to death to support you all. Well, stop, my father said. I looked at him. Stop what? Stop acting like we can't survive without you, he said. He leaned forward. His eyes were hard and flat. We don't need your money, Ava. My heart skipped a beat. What? We don't need your money, he repeated, louder this time. We were fine before you and we'll be fine without you. We don't need your charity. I looked at my mother. Mom, do you agree with this? My mother took a sip of her wine. She didn't look at me. Your father is right. You bring too much stress. You bring too much drama. Drama, I whispered. I pay the bills. We don't need it, she said firmly. And we don't need you. The words hung in the air. We don't need you. I felt like I had been slapped. I turned to Madison, my baby sister. The one I had held when she cried over sneakers. The one I had built a life for. Madison, I said. Tell them about the shop. Tell them about the car. Madison looked at me. She didn't look sad. She looked bored. She looked like she was watching a TV show she didn't like. She shrugged. Honestly, Ava, she said. They're right. You're exhausting. Nobody needs you here. Nobody needs you. I looked around the table. I looked at the faces of the 3 people I loved most in the world. There was no love in their eyes. There was resentment. There was jealousy. There was a desire to hurt me. They wanted my money, but they hated me for having it. And now they had convinced themselves they didn't even need the money. They were drunk on their own pride. I felt a strange sensation wash over me. It wasn't anger. It wasn't sadness. It was a cold, absolute clarity. The contract was broken. I didn't scream. I didn't throw my wine glass. I didn't cry. I stood up. My legs felt steady. Okay, I said. My voice was very quiet. Sit down, my father barked. We're not done. I am, I said. I walked out of the dining room. I walked past the living room with the big TV. I walked to the front door. Where are you going? My mother yelled from the table. Don't you dare walk out on this family. I didn't answer. I put on my coat. I grabbed my purse. I didn't even go upstairs to get my suitcase. I left my clothes. I left my toothbrush. I left the scotch on the counter. I opened the front door. The cold air hit my face. It felt good. It felt clean. I walked down the steps, past the silent third step, and got into my rental car. I backed out of the driveway. I saw the silhouette of my father standing in the window, watching me. I put the car in drive and I drove away. I didn't look back. I drove for 20 miles before I stopped. I pulled into a motel off the interstate. It wasn't a nice place. The sign flickered, buzzing like an angry hornet. Vacancy. I got a room. It smelled like stale cigarettes and lemon cleaner. The carpet was a pattern of ugly brown swirls. I sat on the edge of the bed. I kept my coat on because the room was cold. I stared at the blank television screen. My mind was racing, replay after replay of the dinner. We don't need your money. Nobody needs you. They had said it with such conviction. They really believed it. They thought my contribution was nothing. They thought they were doing it all themselves, and I was just a nuisance who wrote checks. I felt a vibration in my pocket. My phone. I pulled it out. I expected a text from my mom, maybe an apology, maybe a demand to come back and do the dishes. But there were no texts. I opened Instagram. It was a reflex. I clicked on the icon. Madison's story was the first bubble at the top of the screen. I hesitated. I shouldn't look. I knew I shouldn't look, but I had to know. I tapped the screen. The photo filled my phone. It was a selfie. Madison was in the foreground, holding a glass of wine, making a duck face. Behind her, my parents were smiling. My dad was holding a turkey leg like a trophy. My mom was laughing. They looked relieved. They looked happier than they had when I was sitting there. The caption was what stopped my heart. Thanksgiving with the real ones. So grateful for this small, strong family. We don't need anyone else to be happy. Number family first, number self-made, number no negativity. I felt a physical pain in my chest, sharp and deep. No negativity. That was me. I was the negativity. I swiped up to read the comments. Madison had posted it to her main feed too. Comment 1 from her best friend. Love this, you guys look so happy. Where's your sister? Madison's reply. She left. Couldn't handle seeing us happy, I guess. We're better off. It's just us 3 against the world. Comment 2 from a customer. You are such an inspiration, Madison. Built that business from nothing and you still have time for family. A true boss. Madison's reply. Thank you. It's hard work, but I did it all on my own. No handouts here. Comment 3 from a neighbor. Your parents must be so proud of you carrying the family legacy. Madison's reply. They are. I spoil them whenever I can. They deserve it. I stared at the phone until the screen went dark. She wasn't just venting. She was erasing me. She was rewriting the history of our lives in real time. In her version of the story, she was the hero. She was the provider. She was the one who built the business from nothing. And I was, what? The villain, the bitter sister who left early, or worse, a ghost, someone who didn't matter at all. She was taking credit for the clothes on her back. She was taking credit for the food on the table. She was taking credit for the roof over their heads. I felt a tear roll down my cheek. It was hot and angry. I wiped it away. Then I felt something else. The sadness was burning off. Like mist in the morning sun, the grief was evaporating. And underneath it there was something hard, something cold, something sharp like steel. They said they didn't need me. They said no handouts. Madison said she did it all on her own. Okay, I thought. The thought was a whisper in my mind. Okay, if they were so independent, why was I carrying them? If Madison was a self-made boss, why was my name on her car loan? If my parents didn't need my money, why was my bank account linked to their mortgage? They wanted to live in a fantasy world where they were successful and independent, and I was irrelevant. I decided, right then and there, sitting on that lumpy motel mattress to grant their wish. I would make their fantasy a reality. I would remove myself completely. I stood up. I took off my coat. I walked over to the small desk in the corner of the room. I opened my laptop. The screen glowed blue in the dim room. I cracked my knuckles. My hands weren't shaking anymore. They were steady. They were the hands of a software engineer. the hands of someone who fixes problems. And this was a problem I knew how to fix. I logged into my online banking. I logged into the loan provider portal. I logged into the utility accounts. I laid everything out on the screen. The spreadsheet of my sacrifice, the ledger of my love. I looked at the numbers. Madison-style boutique lease, $3,000/month. Franklin Power and Light, $250/month. White SUV auto loan, $680/month. Mortgage transfer, $1,200/month. It was a lot of money. It was a fortune. And they had spit on it. I hovered my mouse over the first account. The SUV. I remembered the day I bought it for her, how she hugged me, how she promised she would pay me back. She never paid a dime, not 1 cent. No handouts, I whispered, repeating her Instagram comment. I clicked the mouse. The sound of the click was loud in the quiet room. It was the sound of a bridge burning. But this time, I wasn't the one stuck on the burning bridge. I was the one lighting the match. I was ready to work. I was ready to show them exactly what life looked like when nobody needed Ava. The silence of the room didn't feel lonely anymore. It felt like the calm before the storm. I sat in the motel room. The silence was loud. For the first hour, I didn't move. I just sat on the edge of the bed with my coat still on. The words from dinner kept playing in my head like a broken record. We don't need your money. Nobody needs you. They had said it with such confidence. They truly believed they were independent. They believed I was just a nuisance. I walked over to the desk and opened my laptop. I needed to see the truth. I opened my family budget file. This was the spreadsheet I had kept for 5 years. It tracked every dollar I sent to Franklin. I looked at the total at the bottom of the screen. $265,820. I stared at that number. $265,000. That was the price of my acceptance. That was the cost of my seat at their table. And today they had revoked that seat. I didn't feel sad anymore. I felt cold. I felt clear. If they were self-made, as Madison claimed on Instagram, then they didn't need this money. If my father was the provider he claimed to be, he didn't need my help with the mortgage. I realized I had been the one holding them up. I was the crutch. And because I was holding them up, they never had to learn how to stand on their own. I wasn't helping them, I was enabling them. I took a piece of paper from the hotel notepad. I wrote down 3 things: the SUV, the boutique, the house. It was a short list, but it covered everything. I logged into my bank accounts. I logged into the loan portals. I checked the contracts. My name was on everything. The car title, my name, the business lease, my name, the recurring mortgage transfer, my bank account. I had the power to stop it all. I hesitated for 1 second. I thought about my mother. I thought about how hard it would be for them. But then I remembered the look on Madison's face. I remembered her saying I was a burden. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to fight. I was just going to give them exactly what they asked for. Independence. I closed the laptop. It was late, but I knew exactly what I was going to do when the sun came up. Silence was no longer my weakness. It was my strategy. The phone felt heavy in my hand. It wasn't physical weight. It was the weight of what I was about to do. I had the number for the auto finance company on the screen. Move 1. The symbol of status. Madison loved that white SUV more than she loved most people. It was her identity. She parked it in the front of the driveway. She took photos in it. She treated it like a throne. But the registration said Ava Miller. The loan said Ava Miller. I dialed the number. Thank you for calling Franklin Auto Finance. For payments, press 1. I waited. To speak to a representative, press 0. I pressed 0. Hi, this is Sarah. How can I help you today? The voice was cheerful, professional. Hi, Sarah, I said. My voice was calm. It surprised me how calm I sounded. My name is Ava Miller. I'm calling regarding account number 88,492B. I heard the clicking of keys. Okay, Miss Miller. For the white SUV, I see here that your payments are current. Did you want to make next month's payment early? No, I said. I'm calling to request a voluntary repossession. The typing stopped. There was a long pause. I'm sorry, Sarah asked. You want to surrender the vehicle? Yes, I said. I am the primary borrower. The vehicle is currently in the possession of a secondary driver, my sister. I am no longer authorizing her use of the vehicle, and I will not be making any further payments. Miss Miller, Sarah said, her voice dropping to a serious tone. You understand that a repossession will negatively impact your credit score, even a voluntary one. It will go on your report. I understand, I said. I had an 800 credit score. I had savings. I could take the hit. My credit score would recover in a few years. My dignity needed to be recovered now. Okay, Sarah said slowly. If you're sure, we can arrange a pickup. Where is the vehicle located? It's at 42 Maple Street, Franklin, I said. It's parked in the driveway, or it might be at 100 Main Street in front of the boutique. We can send a truck today, Sarah said. Do you have the keys? The secondary driver has the keys, I said, but I have a spare set. I can overnight them to you, however you have my permission to tow it immediately. The secondary driver might be uncooperative. We handle that all the time, Sarah said. We'll dispatch a truck by noon. Thank you, I said. Is there anything else? No, that's all. I hung up. I stared at the phone. It was done. The truck was coming. I imagined the scene. Madison walking out of her shop or waking up at the house and seeing the tow truck. I imagined her panic. She would reach for her phone. She would call me. I went into my phone settings. I scrolled down to contacts. I found Madison. I clicked block caller. I found mom. Block caller. I found dad. Block caller. I didn't want to hear the screams. I didn't want the drama. I had already lived the drama. This was just the paperwork. Move 2, the infrastructure, the car, was the emotional blow. The next move was the structural blow. I logged into the bank portal. I navigated to the recurring transfers tab. There it was. Monthly transfer to Jerry Miller Mortgage Assist $1,200. Next transfer scheduled, Nov 30th. My father had said, "We don't need your money." He said it with such pride. He said it like my money was an insult. I hovered the mouse over the trash can icon. Delete. A pop-up box appeared. Are you sure you want to delete this recurring transfer? I thought about the unpaid bills from my childhood. I thought about the fear in my mother's eyes when I was 10. I thought about how I had fixed that fear for them. But they had forgotten the fear. They had gotten comfortable, and comfort had made them cruel. Yes, I said out loud. I clicked confirm. The line disappeared from the screen, just like that. Years of safety gone in a pixelated blink. Next, the utilities. I went to the power company website. I logged in. My name was on the account because my dad had a past due balance 10 years ago and couldn't open a new one. I clicked close account. Select date of service termination. I looked at the calendar. Today was Friday. I selected Monday, December 1st. I wasn't going to turn the lights off today. That would be petty. I would give them until the end of the billing cycle. They would get a letter. Service at this address is scheduled to be disconnected. They could open their own account. They could pay their own deposit. They were adults. Finally, the boutique. The Madison-style empire. This was the big one. This was the lease. I opened my email. I drafted a new message to Mr. Henderson, the landlord. He was a nice old man who owned the building on Main Street. He liked me because the rent was always on time. Subject. Notice of guarantor withdrawal, Unit 4 billion. Dear Mr. Henderson, I hope you are well. I am writing to formally notify you that effective immediately, I will no longer be covering the rental payments for the commercial lease at Unit 4 billion Madison style. As per our agreement, I was acting as the financial guarantor. Please consider this my formal notice that I am withdrawing all future financial support for this tenant. Please direct all future invoices and correspondence directly to the business owner, Madison Miller. I have instructed my bank to stop all automatic drafts to your account starting December 1st. I apologize for any inconvenience this may cause you. I wish you the best. Sincerely, Ava Miller. I read it over. It was professional, it was cold, it was final. I hit send. Then I did the same for the business credit card. I was the primary account holder. Madison was an authorized user. I logged into American Express. I clicked on Manage Cards. I selected Madison Miller. I clicked Remove Authorized User. I clicked Freeze Card. Somewhere in Franklin, inside a purse or a wallet, a piece of plastic just became a useless piece of scrap. I sat back. My heart was beating fast, a steady thump-thump-thump against my ribs. It was 10:30 a.m. In 90 minutes, I had dismantled the entire financial ecosystem of the Miller family. I felt lightheaded. I stood up and walked to the window. I looked out at the parking lot. I expected to feel guilty. I had been trained since birth to feel guilty. I had been trained to believe that their happiness was my responsibility and their sadness was my fault. But I didn't feel guilty. I felt clean. I felt like I had been carrying a backpack full of rocks for 15 years, hiking up a mountain while they rode in a cart I was pulling. And finally, I had just unbuckled the straps. I had let the cart go. I wasn't pulling them anymore. If they wanted to climb the mountain, they had to walk. I packed my laptop back into my bag. I gathered my few things. I checked out of the motel. I wasn't ready to go to the airport yet. I had one more thing to do. I needed to witness it. I wasn't doing it to gloat. I wasn't doing it to laugh at them. I needed to see it to believe it. I needed to see the reality of their independence, crashing into the reality of my absence. I got into my rental car. I turned the key. GPS, I said to the dashboard. Navigate to Main Street, Franklin. I drove toward the town. The sky was still gray, but the road ahead was clear. I was going to watch the house of cards fall. I arrived in town around 11:30 a.m. The sky had turned a darker shade of slate gray, and the wind was picking up, blowing dead leaves down Main Street. Franklin is the kind of town where everyone watches everyone. Main Street is the stage. If you trip on the sidewalk in front of the bakery, 3 people will be talking about it by dinner. I parked my rental car in a spot across the street from Madison Style. I was far enough away to be unnoticed, but close enough to see everything. I pulled my collar up. I wasn't there to cause a scene. I was there to witness the end of the play. I walked into the Daily Grind, the coffee shop opposite the boutique. I ordered a black coffee. The barista, a girl I went to high school with but who didn't recognize me, handed it over with a bored expression. I sat by the window. The glass was cold. Across the street, Madison's boutique looked busy. The lights were on. The mannequins in the window were wearing expensive coats I had paid for. And right in front, in the loading zone, sat the white SUV. It was gleaming. It looked out of place in the gritty downtown. It looked like a spaceship that had landed in a cornfield. I checked my watch. 11:45 a.m. 5 minutes later, a large yellow truck turned the corner. It was a flatbed tow truck. It was loud. The gears ground together as it downshifted. The air brakes hissed. It pulled up right alongside the white SUV. I took a sip of my coffee. It was bitter. The driver got out. He was a big man in a reflective vest. He held a clipboard. He checked the license plate of the SUV. He nodded to himself. He didn't knock on the door of the boutique. He didn't ask for permission. He just started lowering the ramp. Inside the shop, I saw movement. Madison must have seen the flashing orange lights of the truck. She burst out the front door. She wasn't wearing a coat. She was wearing a thin silk blouse, shivering in the wind. "Hey," she screamed. I could hear her voice through the glass of the coffee shop. "Hey, what are you doing?" The driver ignored her. He was hooking chains to the undercarriage of the SUV. Madison ran up to him. She grabbed his arm. "Get away from my car. You can't touch that. That's a $70,000 car." The driver pulled his arm away. He said something to her. He pointed to his clipboard. Madison was frantic. She looked around. People were stopping on the sidewalk. Mrs. Gable from the bakery came out, wiping her hands on her apron. The man from the hardware store stepped out. In a small town, this wasn't just a repossession. It was a spectator sport. Madison pulled out her phone. She started tapping furiously. My phone, sitting on the table in front of me, lit up. Blocked call. It lit up again. Blocked call. She was panicking. The safety net was gone and she was free falling. I watched as the driver activated the winch. The white SUV began to tilt. It was pulled slowly, inexorably, up the ramp of the truck. Madison was crying now. She was stomping her feet like a toddler. "My sister pays for it. Call my sister, she'll tell you." The driver shook his head. He got back into the cab. The truck drove away. The white SUV, the symbol of her self-made success, disappeared around the corner. Madison was left standing on the curb. The spot where the car had been was empty, just a patch of oil on the asphalt. She looked small. She looked pathetic. The crowd was whispering. I could see them pointing. Did she get repossessed? I thought she owned that outright. Guess the business isn't doing so well. I stood up. I left my coffee on the table. I walked out of the shop and crossed the street. I didn't want to kick her while she was down, but I needed her to know that this wasn't a mistake. This was a choice. Madison saw me coming. Her eyes went wide. Her mascara was running down her cheeks in black streaks. "Ava," she shrieked. She ran toward me. "Ava, oh my God, you have to call them. They stole my car, they just took it." She grabbed my coat. Her hands were shaking. "Fix it," she yelled. "Call the bank, tell them it's a mistake." I looked at her hands clutching my coat. I gently peeled her fingers off. "It's not a mistake, Madison," I said. My voice was steady. It cut through the wind. She froze. "What? I called them," I said. "I authorized the repossession." Her mouth fell open. She looked at me like I had grown a second head. You did this. Why? Because you told me nobody needs me, I said. Are you crazy? She screamed. Because of a dinner conversation. You took my car because of a dinner conversation. It wasn't a conversation, I said. It was a declaration. You stood there, ate the food I paid for, and told me I was useless. You told the internet you did it all yourself. I was just venting, she cried. Ava, how am I supposed to get home? How does this look? Everyone is watching. She gestured to the people on the sidewalk. They were staring. I don't care how it looks, I said. I care about the truth, and the truth is you can't afford that car. I hate you, she hissed. You're jealous. You're jealous because I'm popular and you're just a boring computer nerd. I smiled. It was a sad smile. Maybe, I said, but this boring nerd isn't the one standing on the curb crying. Just then, her phone pinged. Then it pinged again. She looked down, her face went pale. The email, she whispered. Mr. Henderson, the landlord. She looked up at me, terror in her eyes. He says the guarantor has withdrawn. He says I have to post a full year's rent in cash within 48 hours or vacate. She started to shake. Ava, that's $36,000. I don't have that. I know, I said. I guess you'll have to be self-made, Madison. For real this time. You're ruining me, she sobbed. She fell to her knees on the sidewalk. You're destroying my life. No, Maddie, I said softly. I'm just taking back mine. I looked at her one last time. She was a mess. She was a child who had never been told no. Goodbye, Madison, I said. I turned around and walked back to my car. Ava, she screamed behind me. Come back, you can't leave me here. I got into my car. I locked the door. I put it in gear. As I drove away, I saw her sitting on the sidewalk, head in her hands, while the townspeople whispered around her. The illusion was broken. The curtain had fallen. The drive to the airport was quiet. I turned off the radio. I wanted to listen to the sound of the tires on the pavement. It was a steady, rhythmic hum. Leaving, leaving, leaving. My phone was still blowing up, even though I had blocked the calls. The voicemails were piling up in the backend system. I could see the notification light blinking. I knew what they were saying. My father would be raging. He would be shouting about respect, about duty. He would be realizing that the mortgage payment wasn't going to arrive next week. The fear of the red envelopes would be coming back to him. My mother would be crying. She would be playing the victim. How could a daughter do this to her own mother? And Madison. Madison was probably still on the curb, realizing that her life as a boss babe was over. I drove past the town line. The sign said, "You are now leaving Franklin. Come back soon." No, I said out loud. I don't think I will. I felt a wave of sadness hit me then. It wasn't regret. I knew I had done the right thing. But it was grief. I was grieving the family I wanted. I was grieving the fantasy that if I just worked hard enough, if I just gave enough, they would finally love me the way I loved them. I realized that I had been buying their love. And the moment the payment stopped, the love stopped. That meant it was never love in the first place. It was a transaction. I wiped a tear from my eye. It's okay, I told myself. You're free. I arrived at the airport. I returned the rental car. The shuttle bus ride to the terminal felt like a transition. I was moving from their world back to mine. I went through security. I sat at the gate. I watched the planes taking off, heavy metal birds lifting into the sky. I opened my laptop one last time. I had one more email to write. To Mom, Dad, Madison. Subject, goodbye. I am going back to San Francisco. Do not come looking for me. I have spent my entire adult life trying to save you. I tried to keep you warm. I tried to keep you safe. I tried to make you proud. But at dinner, you told me the truth. You said you didn't need me. You said I was a burden. I have decided to believe you. I have removed all my financial support. The car, the shop, the house, it is all in your hands now. This isn't punishment. This is the independence you asked for. I hope you find a way to be happy. But you will have to find it without my checkbook. Ava, I hit send. I closed the laptop. I felt lighter, physically lighter. I bought a sandwich and a bottle of water. I ate slowly, tasting the food. For 15 years, every time I spent money on myself, I felt guilty. If I bought a coffee, I thought, that's $5 Mom could use. If I bought a new shirt, I thought, Madison needs shoes. But today I bought the sandwich. And I enjoyed it. I boarded the plane. I got a window seat. As the plane taxied down the runway, the engines roared. The force pushed me back into my seat. We lifted off. I looked down at the ground. The houses became tiny squares. The cars became dots. The town of Franklin, with all its drama and pain, disappeared under a layer of clouds. I leaned my head back against the seat. I was alone. I had no family to go home to for Christmas. I had no one to call when I landed. But I had myself. I had my dignity. I had my self-respect. And for the first time in my life, I had my own future. I closed my eyes and fell asleep. It was the first time I had slept without grinding my teeth in years. 3 months later, I am sitting on the balcony of my new apartment in San Francisco. It has a view of the bay. The water is blue and sparkling. I bought this place last month. I used the money I used to send to Franklin. I heard from a cousin that things back home have changed. Madison's boutique closed down 2 weeks after I left. She couldn't come up with the rent. She had to declare bankruptcy. She's working as a receptionist at a dental office now. She takes the bus. My parents sold the house. They couldn't afford the mortgage without my assistance. They moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment on the other side of town. My dad had to pick up extra shifts. It sounds hard, and a part of me, the old Ava, wants to rush in and fix it. But the new Ava knows better. They are surviving. They are figuring it out. They are finally living a life that is real, not a life subsidized by my sacrifice. I haven't spoken to them. I still have them blocked. Maybe one day, years from now, we can talk. But not yet. Not until I know that they want to see me, not my wallet. I took up painting. I'm terrible at it, but I love it. I go hiking on weekends. I made new friends who like me for my jokes, not my loans. I learned that boundaries are not walls to keep people out. They are gates to protect your peace. I learned that you cannot save people who do not want to be saved. You cannot set yourself on fire to keep others warm, especially when they stand around the fire complaining that it's not hot enough. I look at the ocean. I take a deep breath of the salty air. I am Ava. I am a software engineer. I am a painter. I am a woman who chose herself, and I am happy. Thank you for listening to my story. I know it wasn't a fairy tale ending. There was no big hug, no tearful reunion. But sometimes, the happy ending is simply walking away. I know there are people watching this right now who feel the same way I did. Maybe you're the one paying the bills. Maybe you're the one fixing the messes. Maybe you're the one who is always there but never appreciated. If that's you, I want you to know something. You are enough. You are worthy of love that doesn't cost a thing. Don't be afraid to choose yourself. It's the scariest thing you'll ever do, but it's also the best. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had to cut off a toxic family member? How did you find the strength? I want to hear your stories.